Connecting the community through gospel. The new 107.9 FM, W300EB, Macon, and WDDO 980 AM, Perry, Macon.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the Glory 980 AM, the Glory Media Group, LLC, WDDO AM, its staff, management, or advertisers, but are the views and opinions of the participants of the broadcast.
It is now time for the live broadcast of the NAACP with Gwinnett, Westbrook, and Mr. Dumas.
Good evening and welcome to another segment of the NAACP Truth Show. I'm Willie Dumas, your host. I'll be joined later by President WESTBRROKS. We're certainly glad you could join us today on this very rainy Monday, but there's what we call liquid sunshine. We hope you had a great weekend. I hope you took advantage of the nice weather over the weekend and that you got out with your families and enjoyed some of the activities around Middle Georgia. We look forward to a great show today. I have a special guest that's going to be joining us today in the appearance of the state president, Mr. Gerald Griggs, and I see he's already joined us by Skype along with President WESTBRROKS. Good evening, President Griggs. How are you today? And
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We look forward to discussing a lot of the things that we'll be faced with in the upcoming election. And so we want to hear your take on a lot of that, how we're going to galvanize our people to get to the polls tomorrow and to cast their votes. And we look forward to them participating in the process. It's going to be a high time in the state of Georgia, a lot of things happening. So if you would, sir, just go ahead and let our listening audience know what you've got in store from the state level.
Okay, and again, thank you for having me. I'm Attorney Gerald Griggs. I'm the new president of the state conference of the Georgia NAACP. Honored to be with you guys. We have a lot on our plate. Currently, many of the branches are getting ready to mobilize ahead of the primary election. So we're pushing people to the polls. Many will be doing poll monitoring throughout all day tomorrow. Many will be helping to move people to and from the polls. And so it's so much going on in the state of Georgia because we have an all-important Georgia primary. There are so many candidates that are on the ballot. And again, as the NAACP, we're nonpartisan. We just want people to make sure they exercise their right to the franchise. So tomorrow, I will probably be at the state conference headquarters, manning the phones to respond to all 100 branches of any issue that we see that comes up with people's access to the franchise. So we will have a robust mobilization campaign with our partners and with the branches. That's what's on tap for tomorrow.
And it's pretty much like with the president of the United States, and when he goes to the war room when we're at war, because there has been an attack that's prevalent on the voters' rights, and so we certainly hope that people exercise and use that right to vote. To voice their opinion about the various laws that have been changed in the state of Georgia. And also, if you'd like to touch on some of those things, some of the law changes that have come about as it relates to voting here in the state of Georgia.
Absolutely. As you know, they passed the voter suppression bill, SB 202, which changed a lot of rules in Georgia. It shortened the amount of time you have for early voting. It eliminated a lot of drop boxes from some of the major metropolitan cities, limiting the number of drop boxes that they have. Of course, it limited the ability for organizations like the NAACP to provide food and water to individuals who are standing in long lines. It also limited and ended the ability for people to use the mobile voting stations that many counties had purchased to make voting a lot easier. But ultimately, it allowed for the takeover of local election boards and putting partisan individuals on there and shutting down polls. So the new voting laws are meant to disenfranchise individuals. But again, at the NAACP, we're going to try to outmobilize these attempts to roll back our rights. And I think that we will be successful, as we've already seen Over 800,000 Georgians have early voted. That is a record when you compare it to 2018. So we see a robust turnout happening already, and we're just in primary season. We haven't fully rolled out our mobilization plan. So we're hopeful that we can out-mobilize SB 202. We've also filed several lawsuits challenging SB 202. But what we want people to understand is that the polls will be open. If you have any issue with polls, please call your local NAACP branch or call the state office at our election protection hotline, which is 866 our vote. Again, 866 our vote. If you have any issues, please stay in line. Please ask. If they say you've been removed off the rolls, please ask for a provisional ballot. Make sure you vote on that provisional ballot and make sure you exercise your rights. But yes, SB 202 will have an impact on this election. We're hoping to mitigate that impact.
And you did mention earlier about the NAACP being nonpartisan, but we do stand against certain issues that,
Yes.
that come about. I know on the ballot this time in voting, there are a couple of amendments that are on the ballot. One of them dealing with the expansion of Medicaid, and we've had a lot of people who had issue with that particular situation where the governor failed to expand Medicare here in the state of Georgia. And so voters have an opportunity now to voice their opinion on the ballot as it relates to this.
Yeah, there's several questions on the ballot on both sides, and one of them is Medicaid expansion, which we have been a proponent of for several administrations at the state conference level. And we want people to have access to health care. You know, we understand many of the rural hospitals have closed, and there's the lack of consistent access to care, and we think that that's something the voters should voice their opinion. So please make sure you vote on those questions. That's an important question. Of course, there's also the question on whether they should forgive student loan debt, which affects the younger members of the association and our younger brothers and sisters in the community. There's also the question of whether or not to legalize marijuana. There are several questions on the ballot, but I think one of the most important is about Medicare expansion. And we need to make sure we voice our opinion on that, because ultimately it will determine the policy moving forward.
Absolutely.
Tell them that I can't hear.
Also
Tell them
today,
I can't hear.
Okay, all right.
also today we notice the weather. Really big, real rainy weather today, and I certainly hope that's not the case on tomorrow, because we do know weather sometimes affect people's motivation to get out to the polls. And so we're hoping for sunny weather tomorrow, and the people are fired up and ready to go as it relates to voting. It's one of those things that we can't take for granted that will always be there. We've got to fight even for that right. And so we continue to do that by going to the ballot box. And so that too, I'm sure, is on the agenda to make sure that at some point we can get that voted into law where we don't have to continually vote for that right.
Yeah, and that's our hope at the NAACP. You know, we've been doing this for well over 100 years, but we need people to understand that there's never been a more pivotal moment in our time than what we are in right now, and it's important to stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, but also protect these most fundamental rights for our descendants. So it's important for people to get out to vote. Hopefully it will not rain tomorrow, but even if it does rain, you need to stand in the rain. You need to make sure your voice is heard, because we have to make sure that the precious rights that we have fought and bled and died for are protected for the next generation. All of those things are on the ballot. Voting rights is on the ballot. Health care is on the ballot. Education is on the ballot. Fixing the criminal justice system is on the ballot. We have judges all the way from Superior Court all the way up to the Supreme Court that are on the ballot tomorrow. There are numerous amendment questions and voter questions that are on the ballot. And of course, in both primaries, there's the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, agriculture, labor commissioner, all the way down to your House and Senate seats in the Georgia House and the Georgia Senate. And then, of course, Washington, we have all of our elected representatives from the House of Representatives and one Senate seat that's up for grabs. So we need to make sure we understand how important this race really is and this election really is. We have the Public Service Commission is up, which would deal with the regulation of your energy bills and energy prices. So all these things are on the ballot in Georgia. It's so important that we make sure people understand that. And even if it's the primary election, many times in Georgia, a race is decided in the primary because of the partisanship that we have in Georgia. So we need to make sure our voices are heard both in the partisan races and the nonpartisan races. And we at the NAACP, again, are nonpartisan, but we really want our brothers and sisters to get out and vote and make your voice heard.
And we do understand, too, another change as far as a provisional ballot. That change has occurred, and we know that many times, particularly when we vote on election day, and you don't end up in the right place. Tell them how that change is going to affect voters this time around.
Yeah, under SB 202, now if you vote in the wrong place, your vote will not count. So you need to just make sure that you have your voting documents, both your ID and your card. They just sent me my new polling location earlier today. I voted early, but you need to have the correct polling location. If you don't know your polling location, go to the Secretary of State's website. It was just the My Voter page, mvp.sos.ga.gov. The fact that I have to memorize that tells you how many times I've been to that website. Go to the website, put your information in. It should have your correct polling precinct, where it's located. Make sure you print that out, or make sure you take a snapshot on your phone so you have it, and then you have your license or your government ID to make sure that you have that. Because it's going to be important. Again, provisional ballots will not be accepted if you're in the wrong polling precinct. There's other issues that SB 202 already also includes, which is unlimited voter challenges. So again, if you get that card in the mail about a voter challenge, you need to respond, because they're trying to, again, purge people off the rolls. Those cards went out a few weeks ago. So now the card you're getting is your precinct. Make sure you get your precinct card, or again, go to the Secretary of State's website to make sure you go to the right precinct.
Absolutely. And also, I think President Westbrooks is having some issues hearing us. Let's see, it says it's probably on her end. It's something probably with your computer there.
Computer may be muted.
Yes. But another situation that we'll be looking at for certain in the state of Georgia, all eyes on Georgia. Georgia being in the last election turned blue, and so I'm sure there's a lot of I guess watchers to see what happens here in the state of Georgia. And so we have an opportunity here to really be in the forefront of where things are going, even in the election coming up in November.
Absolutely. The balance of power is important in Georgia. So, as we saw in November of 2020 and in January of 2021, the House and particularly the Senate flipped to become Democrat. And so now the balance of power in both the House now and the Senate are up. And there's a belief that it may flip back. We have to make sure, whichever way it goes, that we have to have a voice and a say-so in what happens in electoral politics at the national level. But another reason why Georgia is so important is because of the gubernatorial race, as well as many of the constitutional offices that are up for election here. Governor race, lieutenant governor's race, secretary of state's race, the labor commissioner, agricultural commissioner, PSC, and all the way down to the House of Representatives and the Georgia Senate. So all of these key races are why the country is looking at Georgia to see what our democracy will look like. And it's our hope at the NAACP that there's a robust turnout, that we break records as we already have in the primary, but we also break records in the general, because we need a robust turnout to make sure that our voice is heard.
Absolutely. And so people don't, a lot of times, we were asking questions here locally, and, prior to some of the early voting dates and those types of things. And many people didn't even know they were supposed to vote in May. And so we do hope that people have paid attention and know the importance of this May election as opposed to November. So they really need to show up on tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Uh, President Westbrooks, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, we can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead and you can chime in there.
Well, I just basically, I think I couldn't hear it first, but as you said, it was very important that people do get out and vote. Um, People are counting on us not getting out to vote for this state, local, and state elections, and so um, we just have to get through to people that this election is basically, these types of elections are basically what basically controls the economy, your state and local elections. So like you said, a lot of people were not aware that they were supposed to vote in Maine. That's why we, you know, because of COVID. Well, we had a radio show before COVID, but um, it's very important because of COVID. You were not able to meet in person or do a lot of things. So a lot of people depended on the radio shows for information, to get information out. So this is why we um, uh, got this show, so we could be able to get information out to the community and keep people aware of what's going on throughout the community, regardless of whether it's health, education, or voting empowerment, our youth, anything pertaining to our economy. We wanted to make sure that people were aware of what's going on. We thank you, President Griggs, for coming on. You're always welcome to come on the show, to use this show as a platform to get any information that you need to get out.
And I appreciate that. And one other thing I want people to understand, I saw a question on Facebook that says a senior I assisted received her absentee ballot and went and called about it 2 weeks ago, were told not to worry about it. If you received your absentee ballot and you haven't turned it back in, you can still go and vote. Now, you can't turn that absentee ballot in because that'd be double voting, but you can go in person to vote. We need as many people as possible to vote in person, because
Absolutely.
we know that they are going to purge the absentee ballots. Many of them are not going to be counted. They already had large amounts of returns in the municipal elections where they didn't count some of the absentee ballots. So just to be safe, if you have not returned your absentee ballot already, go in person and vote in person. Make sure you check it out on the Secretary of State's website where your polling precinct is. Go vote there in person, because we at the NAACP were really pushing early vote in person, as well as now on election day in person, because we expect that with SB 202, they are going to try to purge people's votes for invalid absentee voting.
Well, we expected this early on, President Griggs. We started last year. We purchased portable printers, and we were, setting up at different locations and making copies of people identifications for them, because we saw early on that um, if your driver's license number doesn't match, um, we saw that driver's license numbers were not matching the database of the Georgia driver's license DDS. We saw that early on, they were not matching. So we were concerned about what happens with those ballots, that if you turn your absentee ballot in and it doesn't match, and you don't have anything to prove that that's your your ID. If you had a copy of your driver's license that do show that that information, that's your driver's license. But if you don't have that, what happens to that ballot? Is it purged? Is it just laying somewhere? Is your vote not counted? So we started doing that early on to try to let people know that there were other options, even though a lot of people were voting absentee ballots, that we need to get copies of IDs, because we saw this being a problem here early on, before this was passed, that people identifications were not matching.
Yeah, and that's the correct way to handle that, because we understand that they believe, at least the people who are pushing this grand conspiracy, that there was some type of massive voter fraud. They are pushing to try to limit the amount of access to the poll by limiting access to absentee voting and from purging absentee voting. But if you absolutely have to vote absentee, please, please, please make sure you submit your documentation and be ready to fight the challenge that's going to come. Of course, you still have, I believe, 3 days after the election to cure your ballot. And so you need to make sure you check with your local election board on how you cure your ballot or how you prove that you are, in fact, the person who filed this absentee ballot. And so it makes sure your votes counted. But again, we at the NAACP have been pushing early vote in person as well as voting in person on election day.
Right, because being proactive is the name of the game, particularly when laws change, because we know that most of those laws are not in favor of large number of people voting. It's actually to
Exactly.
lessen the vote, and so to make certain that everything is in line, we've had time to get those things in order, and we hope that people have done so, so that each vote does count, because I think that's
Exactly.
important.
You know, I know we can do it again. We just got to first get people to understand the importance of these local and state elections. And you know, people say, they're looking at the fact what we said that the election was stolen. You see, people didn't get out and vote, but every history shows that most people, the larger number of people turn out on a presidential election, even though you have a state and local election, a presidential election, more voters turn out. But we just got to be able to prove these people wrong. We got to be able to show that we're going to show up in numbers again, and we have to continue to vote. This is something that's sacred, um, and I always try to go back and deal with the history of the voting's right, to show how we've had to not being able to vote, from actually having to every 20 years having to have our voting rights renewed, something that we shouldn't have had to do. So you know it's something that we some people take for granted, and people are still not educated on their right to vote, and even special people with incarcerated. So we try to work with our sheriff department to make sure that people are able to vote, that are eligible to vote, that's incarcerated.
President Griggs, are there any particular things that voters should be aware of? I know in the last round of elections, if people were wearing masks in particular that had certain things on their mask, that those were not allowed into the voting areas. Are there any other things that voters should be aware of to avoid in going in to cast their vote?
Well, you always have to understand that within 150 feet of the poll, you cannot be campaigning. So any type of candidate's information, you can't have it on your mask, you can't wear shirts or anything like that. And now with SB 202, you can't pass out water or food or do any type of line warming, making another person feel comfortable within 150 feet of the poll. So there are rules that are now being enforced to make it more difficult to assist people. There are some exceptions to that. We don't even want to get into those because of the criminalization of line warming. But just know, you can't wear any candidates' paraphernalia, any mask with candidates' names, or any even issues. You may have it in certain rural communities, issues with wearing masks that make a political statement. But we just need to make sure in the 30 minutes to 5 hours or however long it's going to take for you to vote, you are focused on, achieving the goal of casting your ballot for your candidate and for the issues. And let's leave the other stuff at home, at least to this point, till we, as the NAACP and other groups, can ferret out in the judicial branch what SB 202 actually says and what's constitutional.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
President Westbrook, you want to chime in? We got about probably about 4 more minutes left, and certainly we pray for good weather tomorrow. We pray for a good turnout of people to exercise their vote, and we do support any issues that you may have. And so you may want to give them that number again, and if they can write it on the screen. So if someone has an issue tomorrow when they're voting, that they have a recourse.
Yeah.
I know on the last election, I was monitoring, some of the activities that were taking place, and sometimes
Mhm.
poll workers aren't, the nicest people to voters. And so, if you have issues like that, you need to know who you can report those issues to, who you can go to get some resolved. I know with new voters in particular who don't know what to expect when they go to vote, they're a little bit intimidated simply by being their first time voting, and it can be an intimidating process if
Right.
people are not as helpful as they have been in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So when you go to vote, pack your patience, but also have the 1-866-R vote to make sure that you can have contact with the NAACP and our election protection lawyer. So again, 1-866-R vote is the number to call, or you can call directly to a branch. Many of the branches are going to have election protection and monitoring. I know at the state office we will. If you have an issue, contact us at the state office, www.naacpga.org. The telephone number escapes me, but you can go directly to the website and it has the telephone number and contact information. But again, we are recommending 866-R vote, where you can reach our election protection attorneys and the NAACP.
Wonderful. President Westbrook, you have any?
I just want to, like I said, just encourage people to get out and vote. And of course, we're asking for you all to join the NAACP. The membership is only $30 annually. Um, it's best to be a member before you need us. So I just want people to understand the relevancy of the NAACP. We've been here for a very long time, the largest organization, and we just want people to come on board to work with us. We got a lot of work that needs to be done, and so we're asking for your membership. Again, the membership fee is only $30 a year.
Absolutely. I know here locally in Macon Bibb, we had Sunday voting, and understand that those numbers were really up as opposed to the other
Yeah.
days that people could actually vote. And so this, I think, this time on the ballot, um, they have the opportunity to expand voter access, and so they're putting it back to the people, which that's the way it probably should have been initially. And so voters now have an opportunity to kind of voice their opinion about expanding voter access. And so I think that's going to be a great amendment that's on the ballot this time.
I know
Absolutely.
that I was gonna say, I was trying to give a figure of because we get a printout, from the Board of Elections, we get a printout of the daily voting through May the 20th.
I
There
think we're going
was
to run out of time.
yeah.
I
But
think
we get an updated report every day of how many people voted. And so we have that number, and we're keeping a watch, and we plan to be monitoring tomorrow. I know, like you said, we have to be um, um, 150 feet away, but we always normally have somebody at the different polling places uh, monitoring and making sure that if anybody has any problems, then they can, they'll have some direction of who they need to contact.
absolutely. Thank you, Attorney Griggs, for joining us, President of the NAACP on the state level.
And also, I know President Griggs, President of the people, that he has a professional uh, life also, and I don't know whether he introduced himself as he's an attorney also. So I don't know if he mentioned that when he.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that, but I am attorney, civil rights and criminal defense attorney here in Georgia. If you need me, you can contact me.
You have been listening to the live broadcast of the NAACP with Gwinnette Westbrook and Mr. Dumas. Come join us next Monday at 4 o'clock p.m.
regular
on
membership,
980
$750 for life
WDDO.
membership, and all the way up. So please join the NAACP.
Thank
The
you
views
for joining us.
expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the Glory 980 AM, the Glory Media Group, LLC, WDDO AM, its staff, management, or advertisers, but are the views and opinions of the participants of the broadcast.